everybody had made up their minds that this is going to be the greatest project that was ever built.
There's no doubt in my mind that the Churchill Falls generating station was the project of the 20th century in Canada, North America, and perhaps the world.
It is one of the biggest hydroelectric power plants in the world. Embedded nearly half a kilometer beneath the Cambrian Shield, its massive powerhouse creates enough energy to light 3 cities forever. When it was built, Churchill Falls was the largest construction project in the free world, a billion-dollar behemoth. Driving it all, the falls. Harnessing this force of nature in the wilds of Labrador will become a battle against the elements and the odds. For Canada, Churchill Falls was an economic engine. For Newfoundland, a tainted coming of age. For the men who built it, an undertaking that challenged the bounds of engineering itself. The creation of a cathedral. One of the first to recognize the awesome potential of the Churchill Falls is a little-known politician named Joey Smallwood. In 1949, he dragged Newfoundland into Confederation by promising his new province prosperity and respect. Churchill Falls would help him to deliver.
This is our land. This is our province. This is our river. This is our waterfall, and we will forever make sure that it will be developed for the benefit of the people of Newfoundland.
But Smallwood faces a roadblock, Quebec. The only way to ship power from Labrador to buyers in New York State is through the province. But Quebec says no. Worse, it demands that Newfoundland sell it the power cheap. Smallwood realizes he has no choice. Without a buyer for its output, the Churchill Falls project will die. In the end, Smallwood sells every kilowatt to Quebec and gives them a 65-year contract. It's the deal of the century, but it'll come back to haunt Joey Smallwood. Jacques Cartier called it the land God gave to Cain, a plateau stretching for 67,000 square kilometers across the center of Labrador. At its very edge, plunging through a crack in the plateau, the Churchill Falls drops a stunning 58 meters, 16 meters more than Niagara Falls. It was this extraordinary bounty that project engineers would convert to raw power. But before they can begin, they must first work out how to defeat 2 forbidding obstacles: immense isolation and a brutal climate. The Churchill Falls are in the middle of nowhere, 1,200 kilometers from Montreal 645 kilometers from the nearest city of Sept-Îles. And there's the weather. In the short, fly-ridden summer, the site is soaked by 760 millimeters of rain. In the winter, temperatures plunge to 60 below, and the plateau is buried under 2 meters of snow. Just getting equipment to the site to get ready for construction is a military operation.
Well, there's no doubt about it. The logistics itself was definitely mind-boggling. We were running basically a 7-day-a-week operation. We were running a ship from Montreal, a ship from St. John's, Newfoundland, or Quebec City, into Sept-Îles, unloading the ship, reloading to rail cars, and shipping it up to Esker, which is 286 miles up the Quebec North Shore and Railroad, and then 113 miles by truck into Churchill Falls.
What will make the Churchill Falls project the most revolutionary in the world is what it doesn't have, a massive dam. Instead, engineers will block the Churchill River and create a reservoir the size of New Brunswick on the plateau. To hold this huge reservoir, they plan to build 65 kilometers of dikes. To create the electricity, they have to do something extraordinary. Construct a massive powerhouse deep inside the solid rock of the plateau. The power will be generated by dropping the huge mass of water in the reservoir 1,000 feet to 11 gigantic turbines in the powerhouse below.
If you consider that water weighs 65 pounds per cubic feet, and you drop that 1,000 feet, that's a lot of energy. So that's fundamentally what you're doing.
Work finally gets underway in 1967. To corral the massive reservoir, the plan calls for 88 dikes. Building them is one of the biggest challenges of the project. From the beginning, the schedule is critical. Deadline for delivery of first power is May 1972. Miss it, and the money will stop, jeopardizing the entire project. The dikes and the reservoir are just the first part of the intricate logistical plan that is Churchill Falls. The water must be funneled from the reservoir to the turbines. So 11 massive tubes called penstocks are hacked 1,000 feet down through the Cambrian shield to the massive powerhouse being carved inside the plateau. It's geologist Ed Montague who lines up the first blast in the powerhouse.
To me, that first drill hole was very significant. It was just a jackhammer with a 6-foot steel, but the project is finally underway.
The powerhouse is the biggest in the world. 10 football fields long and 9 stories high. It's big enough to hold 11 turbines and handle a wall of water charging into this vault from the reservoir nearly half a kilometer above.
It was unique in size. If people are familiar with Montreal, for example, they know something about the Place Ville-Marie. If you laid the Place Ville-Marie down flat, It would be about half the size of our generator room. So that gives you some idea of this enormous size of the hole in which we had to build this structure.
Every day, for the next 3 years, an army of workers descends 1,000 feet into the powerhouse. To carve it out, a new drilling and blasting behemoth is designed. They call it the Jumbo.
They would go up to the face, and all the guys there, about 15 guys on the Jumbo, and they would each be handling 2 of the ladder drills. As soon as this is all finished, the noise stopped, then the powder trucks came in and they just jammed the powder in, and then they put in the caps and with the delays and moved the Jumbo out, and we all just moved out and went like that. It's quite an experience. As I stand here now and just hear a hum, sort of brings back the roar of the drill, the noise, the people, everything.
But as the rock comes out, engineers face another huge challenge. The enormous size of the powerhouse leaves them with an enormous problem. Above ground, the miscalculation of forces on a 40-story building will cause it to sway. Underground, a similar miscalculation will cause disaster.
If you get a 40-story building wrong, you have a slump something like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. In an underground cavity where you have tensile stresses, if you're not able to measure those stresses accurately, then you could have tensile stresses build up where you could have a rock burst, a sudden release of that, something like a local earthquake. That would be very damaging to the structure and actually destroy the structure.
To avoid a catastrophic cave-in, Churchill Falls comes up with an engineering innovation: rock bolts, 60,000 of them.
We have developed a system with rock bolts, putting reinforcing bars into the rock in various patterns and various densities and in various strengths of reinforcing bar, and putting those under stress, that we can actually cause the rock to take on the characteristics of reinforced concrete.
The rest of 1968 goes smoothly. Work continues on the dikes and the powerhouse, and the 2-kilometer-long access tunnel is completed. But great challenges lay ahead.
They strike without warning, burn villages to the ground, and slaughter armies twice their size. The barbarians are coming. Vikings, Huns, Goths, and Mongols. Nomad warriors who enslaved entire civilizations. Barbarians continues tomorrow at 9, followed by Turning Points on History Television.
Hi, I'm Don Green.
And I'm Michael Budman.
When you donate $5 to the Tsunami Relief Fund at any root store, receive a Give Hope leather bracelet.
And 100% of all proceeds will go to the Canadian Red Cross.
Show you care.
And give hope.
Here's a way to make painting easier. It's the new Beauty Tone Flex Brush, only from Home Hardware. You can use it as a regular paintbrush or extend the handle to reach higher without awkward stretching. Twist the flexible neck and you can paint corners and edges more easily. And the easy-to-clean heads are interchangeable and suitable for all types of paint. The fully guaranteed Beauty Tone Flex Brush. It's a great value at just $10.97, only at Home Hardware and Home Building Center.
How did we get the naturally sourced fiber of Metamucil into convenient new capsules? Let's just say, it wasn't easy. The same naturally sourced fiber of Metamucil, now in capsules. Get regular, stay regular, conveniently.
Thank you for calling Altamira. This is Catherine. How can I help you?
Hi there. I need to speak to someone about making my RRSP contribution.
No problem. I can do that for you right now.
Really? How does that work?
Well, we'll put your money into the Altamira High Interest Cash Performer. You get a terrific interest rate and a tax receipt right away.
Nice.
Then we'll set up an appointment to do some long-term investment planning when it's convenient for you.
For people with diabetes, the advanced technology of the Essentia Contour offers speed and accuracy. It requires only a small blood sample, and with this meter, you'll never code again. Essentia Contour. We believe it's the best ever made.
Do you ever lie about your age?
No, I'm only 28. Fool even your toughest critics. Olay Total Effects 7X fights 7 signs of aging. It also moisturizes better than these major department store brands. Olay Total Effects 7X.
Searching for a portal to the past that has everything? Your search ends with historytelevision.ca. Giving you the power to search like never before. historytelevision.ca, your portal to the past.
If Scott Cheeseman collected air miles every time he stepped into a chopper, he'd be spending a lot less time in Churchill Falls. Cheeseman is part of a highly trained team of inspectors. Every day he flies the dikes of Churchill Falls looking for one thing: dirty water.
What tells us that it could be something wrong with the dike itself. It could be a sign of something that's going to happen. Dike failure. Although we haven't had any, what we try to do is we try to pick up anything that will be wrong early in the stage and make any repairs if necessary.
Working at Churchill Falls is in Scott's blood. Both of his parents were part of the army of men and women who came here to help create Joey Smallwood's dream. When they arrived, there was nothing. Not only did they build a project, they built a city as well. Every day, 4,500 workers consume 4.5 tons of meat, 2,600 eggs, 13 tons of vegetables, and 3,100 loaves of bread. What starts out as a bush camp soon becomes one of the most sophisticated cities in Labrador. Working right throughout the subarctic winter, a hospital, swimming pool, and private school are built. The brutal conditions also dictate the design of the town. Houses are constructed with sloping roofs to stop them collapsing under the weight of the snow, and on just one side of the street to leave the other side free for snow removal. As the project grows, workers flow in from across Newfoundland, Labrador, and Quebec. One of them is Ed Montague, who arrives with his wife, Joyce.
We used to live on this street, and we were one of the first families into Churchill Falls. Oh, it was a lovely trailer. I think it was 12 by 60. It was beautiful. I mean, it was the most beautiful place you've ever seen, you know, at that time.
But living in Churchill Falls is not easy. Besides the isolation and the weather, there's the booze ban. To beat it, an enterprising engineer commandeers a jet and sets up the Milk Run, a 300-kilometer dash to the nearest liquor store, an operation Ed forgets to mention to Joyce.
One day I got a telephone call from someone asking if we were ready, if we wanted to get something from the milk run. And I said, of course, we didn't get fresh milk at that time. We used to have the Grand Prix in boxes. And I said to the gentleman, oh, certainly. I said, preferably chocolate if possible. So he said, are you okay? Is that it? And I said, yes. So anyway, he got a hold of Ed later on that day and asked, he said, is your wife for real? You know, of course, I didn't know what a milk run was.
But isolation causes more fundamental problems. Like an army on the march, the project supply lines are long and vulnerable, completely dependent on the railway. As the short summer work season of 1969 begins, this lifeline is cut. The railway is shut down by a strike.
Well, my first reaction to the strike was we had roughly 5,000 tons of equipment sitting on the dock waiting to be moved to Churchill Falls. What do you do if you don't have this rail line? How do I get the food in there? How do I get machinery in there? How do I have tools in there? So the consensus was, look, let's start by getting some aircraft and we'll start running stuff in by air.
Combing the globe, logistics expert Cliff Tyler assembles the largest fleet of heavy lift aircraft in the world. Within weeks, this squadron begins the biggest airlift in Canadian history, hauling in everything the project needs, from trucks to cement.
We had basically a skid already mounted on a truck, loaded with materials of whatever, and backed that truck up to the aircraft. Truck still going, didn't shut it off, and in 8 minutes we could turn that thing around and she was back up in the air.
He hired every transport plane that he could get around the world and organized an airlift between Seattle and Churchill Falls that, I'm told, rivals the Berlin airlift.
The most dangerous cargo is fuel. Cliff Tyler remembers one flight he and a colleague took into Churchill Falls.
We hung on to the rafters on top as we took off, and we were about 3/4 of the way over there, and he said to the pilot, he said, you know, you don't have the oil gauge on number 2 engine. It's not looking too good. And the pilot turned around and said, we bought this out of mothballs for you guys. Nobody said it was going to be perfect. So we landed safely and sound, standing up, hanging on like this with 6,000 gallons of fuel beside us.
The airlift makes 1,200 round trips, carrying 12,000 tons of freight. It's an heroic effort, but it's not enough. The 3-month strike robs the project of an entire summer, putting the critical dike construction massively behind schedule. As 1969 draws to an end, the project is in grave danger. But the greatest blow is still to come.
Roadshow Physics.
Oh my goodness. Yippee! That's very nice. That's great.
For every auction,
Wow.
there is an equal reaction.
Chairs like this bring somewhere between $60,000 and $70,000 at auction.
Oh my. Oh my word. Oh my God.
This is Antiques Roadshow.
Tomorrow at 8, following Great Train Stories and JAG on History Television.
Want dramatically younger looking eyes without drastic measures? Olay Regenerist Eye. While it doesn't give you the results of an eye lift, it hydrates to firm the skin around the entire eye area to restore its natural glow. Olay Regenerist Eye.
Service?
Come in.
Gesundheit. NyQuil. Cold relief. Feel better. You sleep. Sleep like lumber.
What?
Like the infant.
Oh.
Sleep like the home. Good night.
NyQuil, the nighttime sniffling, sneezing, coughing, aching, stuffy head fever so you can get the relief you need to sleep and feel better medicine. Also try new and improved liquid caps.
For people with diabetes, the advanced technology of the Essentia Contour offers speed and accuracy. It requires only a small blood sample, and with this meter, you'll never code again. Essentia Contour. We believe it's the best ever made.
Sometime between Friday's late night dip and dinner on Sunday, the moment may be right, and you can be ready to respond to your partner, even if you suffer from erectile dysfunction. A variety of treatments are available, so ask your doctor which treatment option is appropriate for you. When the moment is right, you can be ready.
But this guy says I should get back into tech. Come over here. He says energy. Bonds are okay. They're stable. I know I should diversify. I know small growth, offshore hedge, mid cap, large cap, blue cap, ball cap. I have no idea what I was doing. And I do like the sound of emerging markets as long as my brain doesn't explode.
Jim, the Scotia Partners Portfolios funds up to 7 of Canada's leading mutual fund families in one investment. Simple.
Thank you.
And no brain explosions.
You're richer than you think. Scotiabank.
Let's do it!
Invented in wartime.
Military has some badass ways of getting around.
Used for playtime.
Alright, this is a blast!
When military inventions go mainstream, they become big toys for big boys.
Where the heck did that come from?
Join host Hunter Ellis as he puts them to the test and follows the path from
tactical to practical, baby! Woo!
Tactical to practical. Mondays at 8, following Jag on History Television.
We now return to Build a Nation on History Television.
With the strike over, construction restarts at a furious pace. But before it can develop momentum, disaster strikes again. At 6 p.m., a plane taxis onto the runway at Churchill Falls for a short flight to nearby Wabush. On board is the entire senior executive of the project, including CEO Don McParland. Despite deteriorating visibility, the plane takes off. At 6:20 p.m., ground control picks up the flight, but it never arrives. While trying to make an instrument landing in the fog, it flies into the side of a quarry, killing everyone on board. Tom Kierans is supposed to be on the flight, but the Boy Scouts save his life.
We had arranged to have a visitor come and visit our Boy Scout troop that night. And Don and I and his wife agreed that I would stay there for that particular event. And that's what happened.
The crash takes the lives of 8 men. It has a devastating impact on the close-knit community at Churchill Falls and on the project.
It was like a decapitation because all the top people they were in that airplane, and suddenly they weren't there, and that was at a very critical juncture in the construction project.
There's nothing to do but push on. The survival of Churchill Falls depends on it. The project is now months behind schedule. To get it back on track, a new project manager is appointed. His name is Dick Boivin.
Well, it was one of these strange things where everybody had made up their minds that this is going to be the greatest project that was ever built.
But Boivin leaves nothing to chance. To keep track of every element of the project, he condenses the entire master schedule into 3 little black books.
They break down everything, every piece of work into a daily rate, so that I could go to a contractor and I could look at my book and I could say, you're doing 100 yards a day, you've got to do 120 yards a day. Because if you miss 5 days, you're 1 whole day behind.
Critical to Boivin's schedule are the transformers. Each of these beasts weighs up to 224 tons. Before power can flow, 29 of them must be hauled from Sept-Îles to Churchill Falls. To do it, a monster transporter is custom built in France. Longer than an Olympic swimming pool, it takes 3 days to make the 180-kilometer journey from the railhead, inching along at a top speed of just 5 kilometers an hour. Driven by the new schedule, contractors bring on extra workers, blasting 24 hours a day to complete the underground excavations by midsummer of 1970. Dead on time. Next, workers begin preparing the powerhouse for the generators being crafted 1,200 kilometers away in Lachine, Quebec. At Dominion Engineering, they're working overtime. While Dick Boivin presses the limits of the schedule, here they're pushing the limits of technology. The 11 units that will produce 5.2 million kilowatts of power are the biggest gamble of the project and the biggest generators ever built.
The large machines of the day in the mid-60s were in the range of 150 to 200 megawatts, and that would have been the biggest of the day. Churchill Falls, because of the very high head at the site, with a relatively limited quantity of water, was able to produce machines of 475 megawatts nominal output, each machine.
Out of the foundry fires come the most fantastic creations. Spiral cases so massive they're shipped in pieces. The biggest runner ever cast in the world. Rotors the size of a small Navy destroyer weighing 700 tons. Today, all of that extraordinary machinery churns on, but keeping it moving requires a huge maintenance program. Right now, the number 6 turbine is having its guts ripped out. Working 2 stories beneath the powerhouse floor, the maintenance crew is installing a new server motor. As always, the crew's got to move fast. No turbine means no power to sell. It's an equation that's driven this project from the beginning. As the components arrive in Churchill Falls, units number 1 and 2 start to rise from the powerhouse floor. The generators are so huge, they're assembled like a giant mechano set from the bottom up. It's a painfully slow job that takes months. Then there are the tests, and not just any old tests. The infamous runaway speed test.
The runaway speed test is a test very rarely actually done.
Despite that, engineer Don Colson has the job.
round figures are normal speed 200 RPM and the runaway speed about 305 RPM, more than 50%, 52, 55% above normal speed. For this reason, the runaway speed test by most owners in the world is looked upon as a potentially destructive test.
But Hydro-Quebec wants it anyway.
The noise level is higher than it would be in one of the noisiest clubs you can imagine, about 117 decibels. That noise level more than doubles when you go to runaway speed. So what happens is you get higher hydraulic vibrations at higher frequencies, you get heavy vibrations of the rotating system at the rotating frequency, and the combination of these makes your heart pump.
For once, winter comes late. By the time the snow begins to fly at the end of 1970, the miraculous has occurred. The project is back on track. But the rush has created problems that no one can foresee. Problems that will come back to haunt the project.
They strike without warning, burn villages to the ground, and slaughter armies twice their size. The barbarians are coming. Vikings, Huns, Goths, and Mongols. Nomad warriors who enslaved entire civilizations. Barbarians continues tomorrow at 9, followed by Turning Points on History Television.
She stood in the street, smiling from her head to her feet. All right now, baby, it's all right.
Sometime between Friday's late night dip and dinner on Sunday, the moment may be right, and you can be ready to respond to your partner, even if you suffer from erectile dysfunction. A variety of treatments are available, so ask your doctor which treatment option is appropriate for you. When the moment is right, you can be ready.
Most masks transform you on the outside, but this mask goes much deeper. New Olay Deep Cleansing Clay Mask. It unpacks your pores working like a facial, so you can unmask the pure you.
Thank you for calling Altamira. This is Eric. How can I help you?
Hi, is there anyone there who can help me sort through my RSP options?
Sure. I'm an experienced advisor myself. What are you thinking about?
We'd like our investments to grow, but we don't want a lot of risk.
No worries. We've got a full range of investment solutions. We can find the right balance for you.
Sounds good. How do I get more info?
Well, I can mail it, email it, or you can go to altamira.com.
Perfect. I'm there right now.
Great. How about we go through it together?
Now you have even more freedom when you travel in comfort class. Introducing Via Rail Canada's new Flexi fares. More flexibility than ever, like discount fares with less advanced purchase. Via Rail, a more human way to travel.
Let's do it!
Invented in wartime.
Military has some badass ways of getting around.
Used for playtime.
Alright, this is a blast!
When military inventions go mainstream, they become big toys for big boys.
Where the heck did that come from?
Join host Hunter Ellis as he puts them to the test and follows the path from
tactical to practical, baby! Woo!
Tactical to practical. Mondays at 8, following Jag on History Television.
We now return to Build a Nation on History Television.
The worst thing about this valley is whatever rain or precipitation's on the go is going to funnel right down through.
For Don Philpott, working in Churchill Falls means working in the rain. Just another hazard in an already hazardous job. Don is a linesman, a rather crazy breed that spend most of their time suspended hundreds of meters off the ground.
We'll jib everything on first, then we'll make our way that way. We'll get the rope, and then we'll string around through. Like that.
Don's also part of the second generation. His father ran the laundry here during construction. Today, Don's got the somewhat dubious honor of checking out one of the 9 transmission lines that span the Churchill River.
We're going to put the conductor cars on the river crossing span here, go across, test for any defects in the conductor, in the spacers, and we might even test a few insulators on the dead end there. We'll string it through that way.
Inspecting the 735 kV lines is a critical task.
I'd say she's wobbly enough now for you to grab that and lay her right on.
Oh, yeah. Everything here is on a massive scale. This is a place where tiny problems are magnified 1,000 times. Don is searching for cracks in the line. Even a small nick can leak power. There are 200 kilometers of transmission lines connecting Churchill Falls to the Quebec power grid. Lines that must be constantly checked. But it's the first 2 kilometers of this massive system that are the most difficult. The 2 kilometers that cross the Churchill River. Checking the river span is a dangerous job. Don's more than half a kilometer above the river, and the line, when it's live, carries 735,000 volts of electricity.
Yeah, it is quite dangerous, I suppose, but after you do it a few times, you get into it, okay?
These transmission lines are massive, even by today's standards. But when they were first slung, these monsters were the most advanced power cables on the planet. Installing the power lines is no cakewalk. A 200-meter wide swath of bush is cleared in a straight line across the plateau towards Quebec. Work can only be done in the winter when the bog and muskeg are frozen solid. Radical V-shaped towers are designed to combat the brutal power of ice and snow, and anchored by 170-ton slabs of cement. As work on the transmission lines finishes, the last of the major projects begins, the filling of the reservoir. It's a mammoth operation, 4 months to flood 67,000 square kilometers of plateau and create the 3rd largest man-made lake in the world. Every day for the last 33 years, the 65 kilometers of dikes that hold this massive reservoir at bay have been checked. The one thing everyone fears is a dike failure. It is the unthinkable. Not only could it destroy the project, it could also wipe out the town. But in August of 1971, as the flooding of the reservoir begins, the unthinkable happens. Late in the day, a surveillance helicopter reports dirty water on the downstream side of dike GJ-11A, one of the most critical dikes on the project. GJ-11A blocks the Churchill River and turns it onto the plateau. Ed Montague immediately rushes to the site.
When I arrived here about 8 o'clock that night, there were several people on the dike, including our construction manager, Rick Seymour, and several of the other contractors were here, and we were just keeping a very close watch on what was happening, and phone calls being made to project managers and this sort of thing around to see what we were going to do, and we just knew that we had to deal with this problem immediately.
But fixing the dike is no easy task, and Ed Montague knows that if it breaks, it will wreak havoc. Downstream is a camp of 600 men, and there's a cofferdam, a temporary wall holding back the river so workers can build the tail race tunnels. If the dike bursts, a tidal wave of water will sweep over the cofferdam, flood the powerhouse, and perhaps end the project forever.
If this dike would have burst, what would have happened was the whole forebay would have just come down in one surge. It probably would have wiped out the camp. It would have wiped out the cofferdams and the other.
With the future of the project in the balance, a fleet of dump trucks throws everything they can find at the dike. Tons of earth are swallowed in a desperate effort to plug the leak.
There were more white hats around here than you could that you could imagine. My job really was just to walk up and down the toe of this dike and the toe of the abutting dike over here, GJ-11B, and just check for other possible leaks.
In the end, blame is leveled at the transporter. The previous winter, it crossed the dike and cracked the foundation.
The consensus was that once the reservoir filled, the water pressure forced the water through the cracks, through the rock, and started to erode the dike.
The failure throws the entire system into question. Filling the reservoir is put on hold until every one of the 88 dikes can be checked. As the summer of 1971 ends, the deadline for delivery of first power is now just 9 months away.
Next hour, the evolution of execution methods in the U.S. reflects influences varying from state to state. Executioners continues next hour on History Television.
Okay, so the world won't notice when you make healthy choices, but you will. Baicel takes your health to heart.
She turned around and left the cave, and I'm standing there by the pool of water alone, like I am in all of my dreams. And it just brought up a whole bunch of issues that...
Tym piórze nie ma atramentu.
What?
I wtedy możemy zacząć dopiero pracować.
Using a broker you can't understand doesn't make much sense either. That's why Edward Jones speaks in a language you can understand, so financial decisions get the attention they deserve. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Coming soon, 31 days of great TV. This January, you can preview more than 40 of the most original and exciting television channels in Canada. That's 31 days of great TV from Canada's leading-edge specialty networks at your fingertips, including 4 fabulous theme weekends. Your preview begins January 1st. For more information, visit greattv.ca.
The 265 horsepower Acura MDX with electronic four-wheel drive. Because you never know what nature might throw at you.
Wow, new cherry Pepto. I love cherries.
Now there's a Pepto flavor everyone will love, and that's reason to dance. Look for it today.
There was a delivery boy here. Outsiders are forbidden.
It's Delicio.
You cannot fool an old master. This is delivery.
It's Delicio, Master.
Your senses deceive you. This is delivery.
He who hesitates loses last slice.
With its fresh baked taste and delicious toppings, it's not delivery, it's Delicio. And try new Delicio Hawaiian.
We now return to Build a Nation on History Television.
It takes just weeks to examine all of the dikes and confirm that the leak is an isolated event. The filling of the reservoir begins again. The project has been underway for 5 years now, and there's just months to go before the power must flow. 11 penstocks, the height of New York's Chrysler Building, are complete and ready to funnel water from the reservoir to the turbines. Below them, the immense powerhouse, and extending 1.5 kilometers through solid granite, 2 tunnels to carry the water back to the river. By October of 1971, the water reaches the penstocks. The reservoir is full. By November, the state-of-the-art control room is the command center for an operation everyone has worked towards for 5 years, the startup. Every step must be executed perfectly to avoid damaging the generators. But for the first time, there's a conviction that the deadline can be met. Below ground, an army of engineers puts the generators through a final series of tests. 1 million kilowatts of power is about to leap from the turbines.
Inspection complete.
November 19th, 1971 is bingo night in Churchill Falls. Down at the plant, preparations are complete. The switch is about to be thrown.
Stand by for startup, Bob. Okay, starting up. Rolling.
$1 billion watts of power leaps from Units 1 and 2 and begins its long journey toward the Quebec-Labrador border. What's been created is extraordinary. The biggest hydroelectric power plant in the free world. One that will soon produce an immense amount of energy, enough to light 350 billion light bulbs for a year.
You're talking about producing about 35 billion kilowatt hours per year at Churchill Falls. It's almost mind-boggling.
It was a remarkably wonderful group of people, or an organization put together essentially by Joey Smallwood. And you have to come back to the fact that the central force, the unifying force in this whole venture was Joey.
But in the end, it isn't Joey Smallwood who officially opens the project. After 6 terms in office, Smallwood is voted out just months before the ceremony. Within a year, his legacy will also be in tatters. Skyrocketing energy prices will turn Quebec's 65-year power deal into the cheapest in the world. Outraged, Newfoundlanders will accuse Joey Smallwood of literally selling them down the river. In 1967, Churchill Falls chairman Don McParland put out a call, not for engineers, but for cathedral builders, men with the inspiration to create a technological marvel. It took 7 years, 1 million tons of steel and cement, and an epic battle with nature, but they did it. Today, Churchill Falls continues to pound out power. Since full production began, it's generated the equivalent of 1 billion barrels of oil. And as long as water continues to fall into the broad basin of the Labrador Plateau, the power will flow.
There's no doubt in my mind that the Churchill Falls generating station was the project of the 20th century in Canada, North America, and perhaps the world.
It was by far the most professionally rewarding job that I have ever had. It was just a delight. It was just like being given dessert for the rest of your life.
Well, I derived self-satisfaction out of it. There was no doubt about it. And I'm sure everybody else who was involved did too. And when you look back on it now, 35 years later, it would be nice to do another one.